All right, football fans, welcome to a Friday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, and I'm going to follow up today on part of the discussion we had yesterday. On yesterday's show, we were talking about NFL Pro Days and do the drills that these guys are doing on the field, do they really translate into their draft stock? Can you improve it or decrease it? What drills are the most important in determining their ability as football players, etc.? And we're going to double down on that conversation about training today. And I have with me as my guest a man who has been training high performance athletes for the better part of 6 decades, Mr. Fritz Hastings. Fritz, welcome to the show.
I'm happy you have me on, Coach.
6 decades, Fritz.
Yeah.
Man, right? That's it. And you've trained, you've been training like kids that are just starting out, 12 and 13-year-olds. You've trained professional athletes, and we're going to get to all of that. But let's take you all the way back, Fritz. You started training guys in the 1970s, man. How did that all come together?
It basically came together because I was delusional and thought that I was going to go to the Olympic Games. So I began assembling equipment to train myself, and then other young people, my younger brother specifically and his friends, they wanted to get into it, and I was the only one with weights because at Ocean City High School in the 60s up until 1969, we did isometric contractions for football training. And
what is an isometric contraction? I don't even know what that is, Fritz.
Okay, so that's actually come back in vogue to a degree. So your power racks, which if the people that are listening understand, are pretty wide, and you can do a variety of things inside them like you're doing them on a free platform, but you're protected. These power racks were only 4 to 6 inches apart, and you would press the weights against pins, letting them down. You held them for a certain amount of time, and that was your rep. So if you were doing a squat, you'd get into the squat rack, take it off the pin, press it about 4 inches, and then hold and press as hard as you could. And that's what they did. And they would line up and go one power rack, 40 kids. And I immediately knew that this was going to be a failure. And I told Coach Servino, John Servino at the time, I said, this isn't working out, right? And we had a very combative relationship because he thought I was, in his history class, I was a pain in his butt. But that's basically where we started. Then Mike Sylvester came in to Ocean City High School in 1969. He was supposed to be an assistant coach, and John took a job at a big Catholic school in Philadelphia where he was very successful, but Mike ended up being the head coach, and we went to old school weightlifting in room 9. We would drag a bench from inside the locker room. We bench pressed off that bench. We did bench squats on that bench. We had 1-inch plates, and he was a very efficient taskmaster at that. I had him for strength and conditioning on the wrestling team, and because he was the assistant wrestling coach, and there are a lot of stories to tell there, but that was really my introduction to strength training, other than what I was doing in my backyard with my little 110-pound barbell set.
That's interesting, man, because you're talking now, early 1970s. In the early 1970s, if your school had a Nautilus, machine, or maybe a couple of weights thrown in a dusty basement somewhere, that was a big deal, right? Why do you think you were ahead of the game, really, man? I mean, when you're talking about training guys with weights in the 70s, that was not real popular throughout the country.
Not even, and there was a lot of criticism, which further down our conversation, we'll get into some of your bullet points. But Mike lifted weights already, and he was a semi-professional football player. He was a tweener kind of guy. He was big, but not big enough, fast, but not fast enough, real smart. and you were only going to be a professional or a semi-professional player. And then obviously, you know, he had to teach and he needed a job for the family and all. And, you know, he divided us up into groups. And that's where I started to understand group training. He had strength and age as his markers. And I happened to be an outlier there because as we went along, I was a 155-pound distance runner at Ocean City and a lightweight wrestler. And I lifted with his offensive and defensive linemen because I was the strongest among them. I think that obviously God gifted me in some way. There wasn't anything special there, just extremely athletic and driven. I didn't like missing a rep. I didn't want people to do more reps than me. And that's how I started to formulate what training was all about. And that would be 100%. And I didn't learn about recovery for years. I wish I had learned it earlier. But it was Coach Slavetsky that introduced me to that. And when I graduated high school, this is ancient history now. The year after, I decided I needed more advanced weights. So I bought York Olympic lifting plates because they swivel on the bar much better. They were calibrated. And I would literally take the 1-inch weights that I had in my backyard and bring them up to the weight room at school. And Mike and I began to build the weight room at Ocean City High School, which, if you remember a few years back, you said to me, you know, the weight room is a disaster. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take care of that. And we came in one Saturday, and I remember they tried to stop me at the door. And I picked up the phone and called the president of the Board of Education. And I told him, who I coached from the time he was 16, by the way. I said, I'm going in the room. I'm changing the weight room. Do you have a problem? He goes, I got no problem. And we went in, we bolted your racks. I took some grief from my partners. They're like, well, we're building a weight room. I said, the weight room has to be built. We have to put the kids in the weight room with the coach. It's not working the way we're doing it right now.
So let me ask you this. Why did you see the importance of that at an early age, and what now? I mean, here we are, we're 6 decades later. I'm going to ask you in a minute about what's changed over all that time, but you saw the emphasis then, just the way that you see it now on weight training, man. What is the correlation between weight training and high performance athletes?
Okay, so I can look at it from my personal experience, and that's why I thought, you know what just happened here? I was like a 135-pound bench presser, which, to be honest with you, for a 155-pound distance runner was really good. But what I saw was my improvement was exponential for a while. And I wish I had been a little more careful because I didn't understand recovery at that time. But I went from that 135-pound bench presser to 225 in like a year, and I still only weighed 158 pounds. And I thought, I'm strong. If I can make other people strong, because I could immediately see what the results were in my running. I became a really fine sprinter. I was an outstanding thrower. I coached shot discus javelin at Ocean City for the boys for years, and then got moved over to the girls team and dominated it. And because my girls had to lift weights, and Ocean City's girls have been in the weight room since the early 80s. And that was 10, 15 years ahead of everybody else. And it was the results. I'm going, you lift weights, you get stronger, you get faster. Something's happening here. So you lift weights.
Right. Now, Fritz, man, you know, I met you when I was a young man. I'm 22 years old. I just got the job at Ocean City. You and Mark Implazio, who had been a coach of mine when I was younger, and then I came over to Ocean City to coach with Mark. You guys owned a gym in town. I joined that gym, and let me tell you, man, there was some wild stuff going on in there. You were in a mad scientist phase of your training. Well, I'm going to tell a quick story. I don't even know if you remember this, right? But I'll tell this story real fast. I'm in the gym one day, and I'm young, man. I'm 22. I'm right out of college. I'm still in football shape. I'm pretty strong.
Yep.
And I'm, I'm looking for something to do in the gym one day, right? I said, Fritz, man, give me something challenging. That was a mistake. I should not have said that. You told me to grab a barbell, put it on my back like I was going to squat it. We put 135 pounds on there. All right, no big deal. And then you said, follow me. And I said, follow you? I got a bar on my back. You walked out the front of the gym. You walked out of the gym. I walked out of the gym with you with a barbell on my back. We walked down the block. So I'm walking down the sidewalk with 135 pounds on my back. And we walked into the parking lot of a Wawa. So if anybody doesn't know what a Wawa is, it's a convenience store, sells food, sandwiches, coffee. Fritz says to me in the parking lot, it's the summertime, man. So there's people everywhere. He says, squat this until I get back. And then he went inside the Wawa. I don't know how long you were in there, Fritz. I must have squatted that thing 80 times, right? At one point I looked in, you're having coffee, you're shaking. It was like you were running for mayor in there, right? And then we had to walk back. The walk back, I thought I was going to die. I never asked you for something like that again. You were in a mad scientist phase. So let me ask you this. What have you learned over the years? Because you mentioned recovery. What have you learned over the year about the ways to maximize training, right? Forget all that kind of crazy stuff that you guys did. But what has really become for you the real lesson about how to get the most out of your athletes in their training?
Well, to continue to tell young people to put the bar on their back and follow me. The difference now is that I would not have let you squat for probably 4 days. Where before it would be the day after, 2 days, you would have been back in the gym doing similar things. I did change things rapidly as I recognized what I could and could not do, because what I recognized was that I was stronger and faster than most. I was one of the top power lifters in the Northeast for a while at 165. And I knew that most people couldn't do what I was doing. Can't tell you why. Could have been drive. Eventually, I ran into others infrequently that were like that. One of whom was, I guess I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I met Bob Wagner. And Bobby Wagner became the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Pennsylvania and was a world record holder. But when he and I met in our first power meet, he was just a 17 or 18-year-old kid. And that was my last chance to beat him in a state championship, because I was very much better deadlifter and bench presser than him, but he was already squatting like 550, 600 pounds at 165. So I began to pay attention to the other athletes that were superior genetically. And what would happen is the training at school would go on, but then we got a core group of athletes that would show up at the gym, and it could be 6, 7, 8 guys over the course of the week. And you might have 50 people on your football team, but those half dozen to a dozen young people were the special ones that continued to grind even after practice. And they were the ones that you had playing both sides of the ball. So I began to learn more about recovery, and boy, did I caught grief from a lot of coaches in different sports. I thought John Bruno was going to shoot me one time because I was actually holding back one of his athletes. He would come into the gym and go, "What are we doing today?" And I would intentionally not give him hard workouts because I knew I was going to piss the coach off. And he's like, "I don't want him lifting weights." I said, "You're not going to stop him. He believes that this is what he has to do." And of course, today, this young man is a doctor. I'm having a little bit of a problem. It was one of the Reich brothers, the younger one. And turned out to be a terrific athlete. He played baseball, or he played baseball at Villanova and or at Penn, later transferred, I think. It was a transfer one way or the other. And actually played a little bit of basketball, but convincing coaches to let these particular people go 100 miles an hour was tough, because they didn't believe in this.
Yeah, that's interesting. There is a lot of debate still about in-season training. Is
Absolutely.
it beneficial? Are you burning kids out? Let me ask you this, Fritz. Who are some of the most successful, high-profile athletes that you've trained, and what separates them, the elite athletes? Because you've trained professionals, you've trained Division I athletes. What separates them? I'm not talking about just their physical ability, but either mentally or in terms of their drive, their training, etc., from many of the other athletes.
Heart, this desire, this looking into the future and seeing what you are. And I've had some at the end of careers that it broke my heart. I trained Kennedy McKinney, who was the Olympic gold medalist boxer at Seoul. He was a lightweight, or a welterweight, and then became in 3 different weight classes, world champion. And most people don't know that I trained fighters for years and years, because I kept it quiet, because it is not a pleasant area to coach. It's great with the athletes, but the everything that surrounds it is not good. And the trainer manager that I dealt with most of the time, he always had some angle going, and I always ended up broke, because I ended up training guys for nearly nothing. And when he brought Kennedy in, I was heartbroken, because what I saw was somebody going to make a comeback. And I told this guy, I think Blake was his last name. I said, Blake, I said, you're going to get this kid killed. This isn't right. And he goes, no, he's got no money now, and he's coming back, and he's going to make some paydays, and, he'll be a contender again. And I'm like, yeah, right. So I started training him, and I was in my late 40s or early 50s at the time. And I was taking this guy to the house. I was using him as a mop. And I'm like, that's not the way this is supposed to work. I'm in great shape, but this is sad. And he did have a fight. He got himself destroyed, knocked out, and then the career ended. And that was one of those bad things. Now, the positive side to this, Kevin, I have 6 of the young people that I've trained over the years now have their PhDs in related subjects, in physiology or rehab. They publish papers, and that's my legacy. Right now, I have 3 people who are coaching, 2 in Division I. One is the head coach, Meredith Long, whose married name slips my mind right now. She's the head coach of Rutgers field hockey. And I trained her as a high school kid. Trish Lefevre brought her to me and said, look, this girl is a great thinker. She is everything I want, except for one thing. She can't put one foot in front of the other. She's not going to make it. And she said, you have to fix this. And I said, okay. I started to watch her run, and I'm watching this young kid, junior, and I walked over, and she's pensive, and she knows my reputation, and I'm like, yo, kid, this is too easy. I said, nobody's paid any attention to you. We're going over, we're doing some leg work, and we're going to go out and do some drills. And I said, you're going to be fine. And guess what? She was more than fine. She took her team, not this past season, but the season before, to the Final Four. And she sent a video to me a couple weeks ago in the weight room with 3 dozen of her girls all doing weighted lunges. And to me, I don't need to make $1 when I look at a video like that. One of my young men, who is a decathlete, that I told the coaches at Ocean City, I said, we're changing his events. And they're like, why? I said, because you got him in the wrong events. And we ended up, make a long story short, I took him and I said, we're going out and we're going to run a decathlon first and second day, 2 days in a row. And the decathlon, 10 events, 5 on 2 days, you're supposed to have hours in between events. I ran this poor kid, Tim Nickus, through 5 events in probably 90 minutes. And I was already convinced, didn't have to do the second day. He was 3rd at the Penn Relays Decathlon. He was at Mount St. Mary's, which was a mecca of coaching, and one of the finest decathlon coaches in the history of the world coached there, Coach Deenan. And he ended up the head coach there and now is an assistant coach at George Mason University. One of my rehabs and someone I trained, who you're very close to the family, was Joe Galeni. And he is a rock star head wrestling coach at the College in New Jersey, doing a phenomenal job. And the thing in common with all of them was absolute focus and drive. Nothing I could breathe into them. It was what they had. So you know what they needed? They needed somebody to be there. And that being there is really important, like you did as a teacher and you did as a coach. If you're there and you're taking care of a problem that is maybe not even related to football or track or field hockey or whatever, then you are putting that athlete on the right path. And you are convincing them that they are right in what they're thinking because you're subsidizing their energy with
Awesome.
your own.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Fritz, I'm gonna get you out of here with this last question here real quick. So you start in the 70s. It's the 2020s. You've been doing this for, again, 6 decades. At its core, man, have young athletes changed over that time? I mean, to what degree is training the athlete today different or more challenging than training that athlete in the 1970s?
Okay, so we have to put a grain of salt into this answer. Am I an old person now? I argue, no, I'm not. I'll be 73 soon. When I was in my 20s, and my counselors have told me, you need to grow up. And one of the older analysts said, no, don't do that because you'll die. You have to act. You have to do the right thing in life. Don't act like you're 20 anymore. You're injured now. I tore a month and a half ago. I had to push a truck that was on 4 wheels that were not inflated. They were like 3/4 inflated. It was an emergency. And I broke one of my rules. I didn't warm up. Tore a calf, tore an Achilles tendon, and vertically broke my tibia. And I still pushed the truck. And, I'm thinking about, I'm going, do I really want to change who I am? And I have to, because the kids today are going to go to speed camp after they're with me, or they're going to a specialist trainer. And then there's a manager that's coming in. There's so much more involved now. The only thing, the huge difference was that 50, 60 years ago, the parent would check up to see who the whack job was that their kid was going to their house. I literally had parents were going and asking teachers and coaches, who is this guy? I can go down the list, all of whom had great careers, but they're like, okay. I mean, one of them is my partner, Russell Snow, who's in his mid 60s now. And his parents had me checked out because I literally sought him out to train him when he was 14. And he brought Mark and Plazio along with him. They were classmates and we're all still together. So I guess I didn't do too bad a job, but there were a number of them, and there were girls included. Melody Sy O'Reilly was the head cross-country coach and track coach at St. Joe's up till a few years ago. And those parents, they're like, where's our daughter going? And once they knew that they were good, it was over with. I trained them. Today, not even. It's a negotiation. I negotiate with parents. I negotiate with their physical therapist. I negotiate with their other coaches. And I'm like, man, this is a pain. However, if the young person has that fire that we've previously talked about, then I keep my mouth shut and I alter my workouts according to what I know is going to happen at those other workouts.
Interesting.
So have I gotten smarter as I've gotten older? I hope so. I guess I did. I have all this background now. And so that background allows me to deal with, coaches who don't necessarily agree. I think most coaches now, Kevin, do know that they have to be in the weight room, that there have to be plyo times, there have to be speed camp times. Those things all help. And we got great people in the area. John Porter, Dave Klemick. They are highly rated strength and conditioning specialists. They do a great job. But we have a lot of charlatans out there too.
Yeah.
And man, you got to pull those kids out of those areas real fast.
Right.
And explain to parents what dangers there are. So
it's interesting, man. You started working out of a garage, basically. Mm-hmm. Now we got kids working out of multi-million-dollar facilities. Very, very interesting to see how, in many ways, the business of training has just become a massive enterprise in this country as well.
Kevin, some of the high school kids are already getting merchandise from companies.
Oh yeah. I don't even want to go down the NIL road, man. That's a fascinating. That's another conversation. So, yes. Fritz, man, this was great. I really appreciate your time. Very interesting. You've left a hell of a legacy. Tremendous career.
Thank you.
So, thank you, and congratulations on all that.
And I really, if I had really done what I wanted to that day in the Wawa parking lot, you'd have done push-ups too.
Oh, great. I'm glad I avoided that.
It's great. Congratulations on your retirement and this new venture. And anytime I can help, I am here.
Thank you, Fritz. Much appreciated, man. Much appreciated. All right, man. That's our Friday episode of the Call Sheet. Appreciate everybody listening. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday for another week of shows. So for Fritz Hastings, this is Kevin Smith. Take care, everybody.